Those words still ring in my head, as sharp now as the day I heard them. It's not personal, Helena, it's business. Then came that laugh, cold, calculated, the kind that froze the blood in my veins. 27 years of loyalty, of dedication, of building something out of nothing, tossed aside in a single afternoon meeting. All to save $200,000 in retirement benefits I had rightfully earned. But what Diane Ashford didn't realize, what she couldn't have known in her rush to be rid of me, was that 3 years earlier, when the company needed a gleaming Gulfstream G650 and their credit couldn't quite stretch that far, I had done them a favor. A favor about to cost them $15 million. The corporate jet lease sat under my name, my personal guarantee, my signature on every page, and I had just made one phone call to the leasing company. The jet was already as good as gone. If this story means something to you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. We just hit our second milestone and are working toward 5,000 subscribers now. Your support means a great deal and helps us keep bringing you these stories. Thank you. My name is Helena Sterling, and until 2 weeks ago, I was Chief Financial Officer of Ashford Enterprises, a commercial real estate development firm based in Chicago. I wasn't born into money or privilege. My father delivered mail. My mother worked as a school secretary. They raised me to believe that your word carries weight, that loyalty has to run in both directions, and that you never forget where you started. Those lessons guided every choice I made in my career. They also shaped what I was about to do. Let me take you back to where this all began. 27 years ago, in 1996, I had just turned 36. My husband Edward and I had 2 children, Andrew 8 and Caroline 6. I was working as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm, but I wanted more. I wanted to build something, to be part of something larger than myself. Ashford Enterprises was barely 5 years old at the time. Diane Ashford had launched it with 2 partners and a dream of becoming a major force in Chicago commercial real estate. 3 employees, a cramped office in a converted warehouse, and far more ambition than capital. They needed a financial manager, someone who could handle the books, manage the banking relationships, keep the numbers straight. The pay was less than what I was already making, with barely any benefits. But Diane made me a promise. Come build this with me, Helena. I can't pay you what you're worth right now, but when this company succeeds, and it will succeed, you'll be part of that success. You have my word. I believed her. I took the job. Those early years were brutal. 70-hour weeks were routine. I handled everything: financial, accounting, payroll, taxes, banking, investor relations. When we couldn't afford more staff, I did the work of 3 people. I remember one night in 1998. It was Caroline's 9th birthday. I'd promised I'd be home early for her party. Friends invited, Edward baking the cake, Caroline counting down the days. But that afternoon our largest investor called. A problem had surfaced with one of our development projects. One serious enough to sink the whole company if it wasn't resolved immediately. The investor wanted out. We stood to lose everything. Diane appeared at my office door, panic written across her face. Helena, I need you. I can't do this without you. The investor wants revised financial projections, a new business plan. Everything by tomorrow morning or they walk. I called Edward. Told him I wouldn't make it to Caroline's party. I could hear the disappointment in his voice, hear Caroline crying in the background. I understand, Edward said quietly. Do what you need to do. I stayed until 3 in the morning. Diane and I rebuilt those projections together. Restructured the deal, found ways to cut risk and boost returns. By dawn we had a presentation strong enough to save the company. We delivered it at 8 a.m. The investor agreed to stay. Ashford Enterprises survived. I made it home by noon. Caroline's decorations still hung in the living room. Half a cake sat on the counter. Edward was cleaning up, and Caroline was in her room, still in her party dress. I knocked. Sweet pea, I'm so sorry. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes. You missed my whole party, Mommy. I know, baby, I know. Mommy had to help save the company. It was an emergency. She was 9. She didn't understand. How could she? That was just one of dozens of sacrifices I made for Ashford Enterprises over the years. School plays missed, baseball games I couldn't attend, family dinners cut short by emergency calls, vacations postponed or scrapped because a deal needed attention. But the company grew from 3 employees to 30, from a single office to an entire floor, from local deals to regional prominence. And I grew alongside it. Financial manager became controller. Controller became vice president of finance. Vice president became chief financial officer. I built that company's entire financial infrastructure from scratch. Every system, every process, every banking relationship, every investor connection was mine to create. In 2008, when the financial crisis hit and commercial real estate firms were collapsing on every side, I was the one who kept us standing. I spent 6 months restructuring our debt, negotiating with banks, talking investors out of pulling their money. 20-hour days became normal. I skipped my own paycheck for 3 months so the rest of the staff could make payroll. Diane called me into her office that December. "Helena, I don't know how to thank you. You saved us again. When this is over, when we're stable again, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. Executive retirement package, everything you deserve." And she kept that promise. In 2010, once the company had stabilized and turned profitable again, the board approved an executive retirement plan, $200,000 after 25 years of service, plus a generous pension match. I was 49. I figured I'd work until 65, collect my retirement, and finally have time with Edward after all those years of sacrifice. Life had other plans. In 2013, Edward started feeling worn down, exhausted all the time. We chalked it up to stress from his job. He was an engineer working long hours on a major infrastructure project. The diagnosis came that September. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months. He made it 7. I took family leave. For the first time in my career, work came second. I spent every moment I could with Edward. We talked about our life, our regrets, our joys. He made me promise I'd take care of myself once he was gone. "You've given so much to that company, Helena," he told me one night, holding my hand in his hospital bed. "Make sure they give something back to you. Make sure you get everything you've earned." "I will," I promised. "I will." Diane came to the funeral. She cried. She told me to take all the time I needed, sent flowers weekly for a month. When I returned to work 6 weeks later, she pulled me aside. "Helena, I want you to know this company is your family too. We'll take care of you. Always." I believed her. I buried myself in work. Easier than sitting in that empty house, surrounded by Edward's things, drowning in grief. The office became my refuge. In 2015, we had a chance to acquire a smaller competitor. It was a complicated deal, multiple properties, assumed debt, integration of 2 companies. The numbers were treacherous. A single mistake could overpay by millions. Diane put me in charge of the financial analysis. I spent 3 months picking apart every number, every assumption, every risk, uncovering problems the sellers had buried and restructuring the deal to protect us, negotiating terms that saved Ashford Enterprises more than $6 million. The acquisition was a massive win. It doubled our portfolio and put us among the top commercial real estate firms in the Midwest. At the company celebration, Diane gave a speech thanking everyone who'd worked on the deal. She mentioned legal, operations, development. She never mentioned me. I told myself it didn't matter, that I wasn't in it for recognition, that I did the work because it was my job and I was good at it and the company's success was my success. But it stung. In 2017, another crisis hit. One of our major properties, a retail complex in suburban Milwaukee, was failing. The anchor tenant had gone bankrupt. Other tenants were threatening to leave. And we were bleeding money on a property carrying $70 million in secured debt. The bank wanted its money and was threatening foreclosure, which would have triggered cross-default clauses across our other loans. The whole company could have come down. I spent 4 months finding a way out, negotiating forbearance with the bank, landing a new anchor tenant, restructuring the remaining leases, convincing our investors to inject additional equity to stabilize the property. It was the hardest deal of my career. Sleepless nights. Days I genuinely believed we were about to lose everything. But I pulled it off. I saved that property. I saved the company. Diane took me to lunch the day the deal closed. An upscale place on Michigan Avenue, and ordered champagne. "Helena, you're a magician. I don't know how you do it, but you always find a way." The board is thrilled. "Thank you, Diane. I mean it. You're irreplaceable. This company wouldn't exist without you." Those words felt good, validating. After all the sacrifices, all the missed birthdays and ball games and family dinners. It was nice, for once, to hear that it had mattered. 2 months later, my assistant Rachel told me something that turned my blood cold. Miss Sterling, I overheard something I probably shouldn't have. Diane was on a call with the board yesterday, talking about cost reduction strategies. Your name came up. What did they say? Rachel hesitated. They said you're one of the highest paid employees, that your retirement benefits are expensive, that maybe there are ways to restructure your position. When am I up for full vesting, Rachel? You hit 25 years next year. 2 more after that, and you're fully vested at 65 for the maximum benefit. 2 years. All they needed was for me to leave before I hit that mark. I told myself I was being paranoid, that after everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, they wouldn't do that to me. Diane wouldn't do that to me. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, I saved them again. Commercial real estate was gutted. Tenants couldn't pay rent, properties sat empty, banks were on edge, and our entire business model was in jeopardy. I worked from home 12-hour days on video calls, restructuring every loan, negotiating with every lender, inventing solutions to impossible problems. I helped tenants defer rent. I talked banks into modifying loans. I tracked our cash flow down to the dollar to keep us solvent. We survived. One of the few commercial real estate firms in Chicago that didn't lay off a single employee through the pandemic. Diane sent me a gift basket, an expensive one, fine cheeses and wine, with a card that read, "Thank you for everything you do. We couldn't survive without you." I set the card on my desk. I wanted to believe it. In 2021, business roared back. We had our best year in company history, closing the Riverside Plaza deal, $120 million mixed-use development. I structured the financing so well, it saved nearly $4 million in interest costs. The board handed Diane a $2 million bonus. They handed me a plaque. I was 62, 1 year from full vesting. Then came 2023, my 27th year with the company, the year everything changed. It started small. My invitations to board meetings thinned out. Diane stopped copying me on strategic emails. Decisions were being made without me. In August, the company brought in a consulting firm, officially to optimize operations and identify efficiency opportunities. Every senior employee knew exactly what that meant. Layoffs were coming. But I wasn't worried, not really. After 27 years, after saving the company more than once, after building their entire financial backbone, I thought I was untouchable. I was wrong. The consultant assigned to my department was a 30-year-old named Kristen Chambers, fresh out of business school, armed with spreadsheets and buzzwords. She scheduled a meeting with me that September. "Miss Sterling, I'm reviewing the finance department structure. Can you walk me through what you do?" What I do. After 27 years, she wanted a walkthrough. I gave her one. The banking relationships I'd built, the investor connections I'd cultivated, the financial systems I'd designed, the deals I'd structured, the crises I'd solved. She typed on her laptop, barely glancing up. And how much of this is actually strategic versus administrative? I'm sorry, what? Well, banking relationships are important. But couldn't a lower-level employee manage those? And financial systems, once they're set up, don't they pretty much run themselves? I'm just trying to understand the ongoing strategic value of the role. My face went hot. The strategic value is institutional knowledge, relationships, experience, understanding nuances you can't learn from a spreadsheet. She gave me a condescending smile. Of course, I'm just asking questions. Thank you for your time, Ms. Sterling. 2 weeks later, I got a look at her presentation to the board. Rachel, bless her, made sure a copy found its way to me. The recommendation was blunt. Eliminate the CFO position, outsource financial management to a third-party firm, estimated annual savings $400,000, including avoided retirement benefit obligations. There it was, in black and white. Avoided retirement benefit obligations. I was 63 years old, 1 year and 2 months from full vesting, from that $200,000 retirement benefit plus the pension match. They were going to fire me to dodge paying it. I went to Diane's office the day I saw that report. No appointment, no patients left for one. Her assistant tried to stop me. "Ms. Ashford is on a call." I walked past her and opened the door. Diane sat at her desk, not on any call, just working at her computer. She looked up, startled. Helena, what's wrong? I shut the door behind me. I saw the consultant's report. The recommendation to eliminate my position. Her expression turned guarded. Helena, nothing's been decided. That's just one recommendation among several. Is it true? Are you considering firing me to avoid paying my retirement benefits? She stood, came around the desk. This isn't about you personally. It's about the company's financial position. We have to make hard choices. Hard choices. Diane, I've saved this company 3 times for, if you count the pandemic. I've given you 27 years. I miss my children's childhoods. I worked through my husband's death. I've done everything you ever asked and more. And we're grateful. Don't. My voice sharpened. Don't tell me you're grateful while you're planning to cheat me out of benefits I earned. Nobody's cheating anyone. We're restructuring. That's business. That's my life, Diane. That's my retirement. That's what I was promised in exchange for all those years. She perched on the edge of her desk, arms crossed. Helena, you're a smart woman. You understand business. Sometimes things change. Sometimes promises can't be kept. If you left now, we'd give you a generous separation package. How generous? 6 months' salary. Health insurance continuation. A strong recommendation. I ran the math in my head. 6 months' salary came to roughly $60,000. My retirement benefit was $200,000, plus the pension match closer to $300,000 total. They wanted to hand me $60,000 instead of $300,000. That's not generous, Diane. That's insulting. That's what's on the table. I looked at this woman I'd worked beside for 27 years, whose company I'd saved, whose vision I'd helped build, whose trust I'd honored. I'm not resigning, I said quietly. If you want me gone, you'll have to fire me. Her jaw tightened. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're the one making it hard. You're the one breaking promises. You're the one valuing money over people. I walked out of her office back to my desk and I waited, because I knew it was coming. The only question was when 3 weeks later, in early October, the email arrived, the one I mentioned at the start. Meeting with Diane, 2 p.m. conference room A. I spent the morning preparing, not for the meeting itself since I already knew how that would go, but for what would come after. I pulled the file on the Gulfstream lease, the one I'd signed 3 years earlier, putting my personal guarantee behind a $15 million jet because Diane had asked me to, because I trusted her, because I believed in the company. I read through the contract carefully and confirmed what I already suspected. If I withdrew my personal guarantee, the lease would fall back on the company's own credit, and without my guarantee, that credit wasn't strong enough to support it. The leasing company would have grounds for immediate repossession. I made copies of everything, saved them to my personal laptop, and slipped the originals into my bag. Then I walked into that meeting in conference room A. Diane sat at the head of the table, corporate attorney Robert Hutchinson beside her. The setup was exactly what I'd expected. Helena, thank you for coming. Please sit. Iset. I'll get straight to the point. The company is restructuring. We're eliminating several senior positions to streamline operations and reduce overhead. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. There it was, after 27 years, after everything I'd given, everything I'd sacrificed. Eliminated. This is about my retirement benefits, I said. Not a question. A statement. Robert Hutchinson slid a folder across the table. Your separation package is quite generous, Helena. $60,000, 6 months of health insurance continuation, and a strong letter of recommendation.
$62,000.
For 27 years. For missing Caroline's 9th birthday party. For working through Edward's death. For saving this company from collapse twice. For building everything they had.
$62,000.
You're firing me to avoid paying my retirement benefits. Diane's expression didn't waver. She'd rehearsed this. As I said, this is a restructuring decision. It's not personal, Helena. It's business. Then she laughed, that cold, calculated laugh. And something in me, something that had been bending for 27 years under the weight of loyalty and sacrifice and broken promises, finally gave way. You're right, I said quietly, rising from my chair. It's not personal. It's business. I left the folder on the table and walked out of the conference room, into my office, and made a phone call that would cost Diane Ashford everything. Apex Leasing Corporation. This is Thomas Whitfield speaking. Thomas, this is Helena Sterling. We need to talk about the Gulfstream lease. I explained the situation, that I was no longer employed by Ashford Enterprises, and that I was terminating my personal guarantee, effective immediately. Thomas was professional, understanding. I'll need that in writing, Miss Sterling. You'll have it within the hour. I typed the letter on my personal laptop, printed it, signed it, scanned it, and sent it off at 4:17 p.m. At 4:30, building security knocked on my door. Kevin, the young guard, looked uneasy. Miss Sterling, I'm sorry, but I need to escort you out of the building. I'd already packed my things, photos of Andrew and Caroline, the crystal paperweight Edward had given me, my team's coffee mug, a few books. Everything that mattered fit in a single cardboard box. The walk through the office was humiliating. People stared. Janet from accounting had tears in her eyes. William from project finance looked furious. Rachel from treasury looked stunned. I didn't say a word. I walked to the elevator, down 42 floors through the lobby, out onto Wacker Drive. The October air was sharp, the sun already setting. Standing on the sidewalk with my box, I realized something. For the first time in 27 years, I was free. I drove home to Evanston, to the house Edward and I had bought when the kids were small. I made dinner, sat in the kitchen Edward had renovated, and let myself feel everything, the anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, the fear. At 9 p.m. my phone rang. Thomas Whitfield. Miss Sterling, I wanted to give you an update. We've notified Ashford Enterprises of the lease default. We're sending a crew tomorrow morning to repossess the aircraft. You're completely clear of any liability. Your guarantee is terminated. Thank you, Thomas. If I may say so, in 15 years in aircraft leasing, I've never seen anything quite like this. You quietly pulled a $15 million asset out from under someone who tried to cheat you. It's rather elegant. I smiled for the first time all day. As someone recently told me, it's not personal. It's business. The next morning I slept until 7:30 instead of 6. I made coffee in my own kitchen, sat in my living room in comfortable clothes and waited. The call came at 10:15. Robert Hutchinson. Helena, we need to talk. There seems to be some kind of misunderstanding about the corporate jet lease.
No misunderstanding, Robert.
I withdrew my personal guarantee. The leasing company repossessed their aircraft. It's all perfectly legal. Helena, that jet is essential to our operations. Diane has investor meetings scheduled. You're sabotaging the company. I'm protecting my personal assets. I'm no longer an employee. I have no obligation to carry a financial liability for your benefit. This is vindictive. This is business, Robert. I learned from the best. By that afternoon, the story had hit the industry press. Ashford Enterprises loses corporate jet in lease default. The whisper network filled in the rest. Everyone knew. Diane Ashford had fired her CFO of 27 years to dodge retirement benefits, and that CFO had quietly pulled the company's $15 million jet right out from under her. 3 days later, Walter Donovan, the board chairman, called me himself. Helena, I just heard the whole story. I wasn't consulted about your termination. If I had been, it never would have happened. I've called an emergency board meeting. I want to bring you back. Full CFO position. Retirement benefits restored and guaranteed in writing. I'll increase them. A week earlier I'd have been thrilled. Something in me had shifted since. I appreciate that, Walter.
He genuinely does.
But I think it's time for me to try something different. You're sure? I'm sure. But thank you for trying. The following Monday a FedEx envelope arrived. A new separation agreement. Full retirement benefits $200,000. An additional $100,000 in recognition of extraordinary service. A formal apology from the board and a note from Walter. Diane has resigned, effective immediately. You deserved better, Helena. I signed the agreement. The money landed in my account within 3 days. I expected to feel triumphant, victorious. Mostly I just felt sad that it had come to this, sad that someone I'd worked alongside for nearly 3 decades had valued $200,000 more than loyalty, more than decency, more than simply doing right. 6 weeks later, I sat in my kitchen with my daughter Caroline, who'd flown in from Portland. What now, Mom? What are you going to do with all this time? I've been turning that over myself. Maybe some consulting work on my own terms. Maybe a board seat or two. Maybe just rest for a while. You've earned it, Caroline said gently. She was right. I had earned it, not just the money but the peace. The freedom. That evening after she left, I sat in Edward's old study. I missed him, his wisdom, his terrible jokes, his gift for making me laugh. But I could hear his voice in my head. Helena, you're the smartest person I know. You'll figure it out. You always do. I had figured it out. Not the way I'd planned, but I'd learned something worth knowing. Loyalty has to run both ways. When it doesn't, when you're giving everything and getting back only what's convenient, that isn't loyalty. It's exploitation. Your word and your name are your most valuable assets. I'd put my name on that jet lease because I trusted Diane, and I've learned to be far more careful with that trust from now on. And power can shift in an instant. Diane thought she held every card. She was the CEO, she had the title, the authority, the structure all on her side. But she'd forgotten about one small detail. A single signature on a lease agreement. And that detail changed everything. The corporate jet is gone. Diane Ashford is gone. That version of my life is gone. But I'm still here. Still standing, still moving forward. Carrying with me everything I learned across 27 years of service, betrayal, and standing up for myself when it would have been so much easier to walk away quietly. The money sits in an account now, my retirement, my security, everything I earned through decades of sacrifice. But the real victory isn't the money. It's knowing I stood up for myself, that I didn't let them cheat me in silence, that I used the tools available to me, legally, ethically, to protect what was mine. Diane was wrong that day in conference room A. It's never just business. Business is done by people to people with people, and how we treat each other in the course of it says everything about who we really are. Today I'm 64. I spend time with my grandchildren. I volunteer. I do some consulting for companies that actually value integrity. I'm building a life that's smaller in some ways than my old CFO existence, but bigger in the ways that matter, more meaningful, more aligned with who I am, more focused on people than portfolios. And every time I spot a corporate jet overhead, I smile, remembering the day I learned that even when someone tries to take everything from you, even when the power seems stacked entirely against you, sometimes you're holding a card they never knew existed. And sometimes that one card changes everything. If this story meant something to you, if you found value in these lessons born from difficulty and perseverance, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to our channel. We're working toward 5,000 subscribers, and your support helps us keep sharing stories of resilience, justice, and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.